So we're talking about the wisdom of work, and then also how this transitions into what we're doing in this month of September. All right? So here it is that God works. In fact, He is the one who designed even the concept of work. He worked for 6 days, and on the seventh day, He rested. That doesn't mean that God was tired. It means that He stopped and He enjoyed all that He worked on. In fact, that's the concept of a Sabbath for us, is that we get to enjoy the fruit of our labor. That's kind of the idea. But God created us to work. God works, and He created us to work. Okay, so kids, here's the thing. If you're intentionally making the paper crinkle, you got to stop. The paper is to sit down on and color, okay? Sit down on it and color. There you go. That's what we're aiming for. Okay. Good. Okay, I'm going to have to start calling out names here in just a moment. Sit down and color. Good? Good. Okay. So, we were created to work. Everybody still with me? We were created to be people who work. In fact, God gave Adam a job before He gave him a wife. This is a very important point, right? For anyone, ladies, if you're going to marry a guy, make sure he has a job first. Okay? Men, you should have a job, and then in that comes the relationship. So work is good, but like anything else in the world, sin has tainted stuff. Life is good, but sin has tainted life. Marriage is good, but sin has tainted marriage and relationships. Work is good, but sin has tainted it. So what we want to do is take a look quickly at Proverbs and what does it mean to operate in the wisdom of work. In the wisdom of work. How do we do this? So number one, commit your work to the Lord. Commit your work to the Lord. We're going to go through this real quick. Proverbs 16:3 says, commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. Notice the order here. Commit your work to the Lord and your plans get established. It's not commit your plans to the Lord and your work is established. Right? So the idea here is that when we're talking about work, we're not talking about your career. We're not talking about a job. We're talking about all the things that we do. Anything that we do. When you're getting ready to prepare a meal, commit your work to the Lord. And here's the idea. And your plans, or literally your thoughts, will be established. Meaning this, when you commit what you're doing to the Lord, then the way you think about what you are doing changes. Does this make sense? If you commit, no matter what it is, mowing the lawn, okay, I'm committing this to the Lord. So all the things that you just talked about, the jobs and the chores that you don't like, if we were able to take that and commit that to the Lord, then Scripture says, then your thoughts, your plans are established. The way you think about that. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for people. No matter what you're doing, do it as though you're doing it for Jesus, not for people. Now, if we could do that, does that change the way we do things and the attitude by which we do them? I love this picture. I've never looked like that while doing laundry. Never. Laundry is not a thing I'm enjoying. And if I have to fold it, even worse. But if I can come into laundry and thinking, Lord, I'm doing this for you. Everything I do, I want to commit it, and I'm going to do it as though I'm working for you. Then all of a sudden, the way I think about these things changes how I operate. So commit your work to the Lord. Second, then, stay hungry. Stay hungry. Proverbs 16:26. A worker's appetite works for him. His mouth urges him on. What I mean by stay hungry is have that inner drive that has a purpose that's bigger than just making money. Okay? Being hungry. This is not about being hungry for money. Right? Like money is my drive, therefore I work for money. Listen, money is not your purpose. Money is just a tool. Right? We can prove this pretty easily. if you wanted to take a vacation, in order to take that vacation, let's say that's what you're hungering. In you, you're like, I want to go on a great vacation. That becomes your hunger. Money simply becomes the tool in order to purchase that. Now, if money, for some reason, somebody said, hey, you know what, we're no longer going to use dollars, we're going to use apples. You pay for everything with apples, no longer dollar bills. How many of you would love to have money then? No one, because money is not the point. Everybody would then be craving apples. Because what makes you hungry is not the money itself, but what you are going for. Proverbs 16, a worker's appetite works for him, and his mouth urges him on. It's what you are hungering for. Knew a young guy, family used to go to the church, but he spent a whole summer mowing yards. He wanted to buy a bicycle. And his parents were wise and said, if you want that bike, then you need to work to pay for it. And he spent his whole summer saving up money in order to buy that bike. You see, it's that drive within us. Jacob worked for 7 years for Rachel. And it says, and it seemed like just days to him because he was so in love with Rachel. Rachel was the one that he was hungering for, which made work not so bad. You all still with me? It's to stay hungry. We have a little bit of trouble in our day, and it's not just in our day, but when you have children who have everything handed to them, everything is given to them, they don't have to work for anything, it creates children who are entitled. They don't work for anything, everything is handed to them, and it produces a generation of people who don't know how to work hard to get things. And it creates this sense of, I deserve this stuff. Things should be handed to me, they should be given to me, and the reality is that handouts produce burnouts. Handouts produce burnouts. Because if you're just giving things to somebody and they're not having to work for it, the result is, why do anything? And people sit around and grumble and complain. Then whenever work has to be done, it's just this grueling, painful, arduous type of thing. Because we've lost the ability to understand that work produces good. To stay hungry. What is it that you are hungry for? That's in you. This is what I'm working toward. This is what I'm working for. If you have, I'm just thinking for people who've had children who are starving. A parent will do anything. They will do any kind of work, not just to make money, not to have a retirement, but in order that they might feed their children. But we live in a day when we are quite satisfied. We don't hunger for much. We have so much, we've lost that sense of hunger within us. We don't really need anything. We have all the resources that we need to buy whatever we want. And in that, we lose that sense of hunger, that sense of desperation, that part in your belly that drives you to work. And in these times, especially in a place and a time when we have so much and resources abounding, we need to be very intentional about asking ourselves, what am I hungry for? Not that I can just buy with my own resources, but what is that's going to drive me to work hard, to get out of my house, to get out of my bed, to pull myself and put myself into places that are not easy, but I'm going to do it as unto the Lord. Stay hungry. Proverbs 12:11 says, whoever works his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense. right? There's a wisdom in work. It's working the land, doing your job in order that you have plenty of bread. But if you're going to follow worthless pursuits, then it's just lacking sense. There's no wisdom in that. 3, then, is be harvest ready. Be harvest ready. Proverbs 10, verse 5, he who gathers in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who brings shame. Now remember, this is an agricultural type of setting, so in families they're working the farms, they're working the land, and Proverbs, Solomon writes, for the one who has a son who works diligently in the summer, that's when you're doing all the hard work, you're planting, you're putting seed down in the ground, you're watering, you're doing all the things to prepare the land, great. But when it comes to harvest time, if you sleep in, then that is a shame. You have done all of this work. You've worked so hard. And then when it comes time to actually gather the fruit of what you've done, listen, gathering the fruit is also work. It's not just given to you. Someone else doesn't gather it for you and bring it to you. You go out and you gather the fruit. But if you're not doing that, that is a shame because you've worked all the hard work and you don't finish the job. We need to have a harvest-ready mindset. The sluggard, Proverbs 20 verse 4 says, the sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He will seek at harvest and have nothing. This is the flip of what we just said. If you expect a great outcome in work, but you're not doing the job, forget it. If you are sluggish and cheating in your work and the things that you're doing, you're trying to cut corners, not doing your assignments, not studying hard for tests, I'm talking about kids, but also with adults and the way that you do your job and how you handle yourself. If you are not working well during the day, don't expect great outcomes at the end. That's the kind of idea that's being talked about here. We need to be ready for the harvest. Commit your work to the Lord. Stay hungry. Be harvest ready. Now, let's spin this just a bit because this gets so good. Jesus, in John chapter 4, he meets with this woman at the well. If you remember this, and he's talking to her, her life is completely transformed. She's like, I have to run and go tell everybody. So she goes to the city, and she says, come and meet this guy who told me everything about myself. Could this be the Messiah? And people from Samaria, they start coming out to where Jesus and the disciples are. I want you to kind of visualize this. Jesus and the disciples are there. They just came back because they're like, we're hungry. And they come back with food, and they're like, Jesus, you want to eat? He's like, no. I have food that you don't know about. And they're like, did somebody bring him food? What's going on? But Jesus is talking about a different kind of food. He's talking about a food of the soul. He says, I want you to see this. Guys, look out. Look at the field. Now, what they're looking at is all of the people coming from the city, coming out to see him. All of these people coming their way. And Jesus says this, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his what, church? Read it. To accomplish his work. Do you not say, there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest? Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. My friends, when we're talking about the wisdom of work, it's not just the work that you do with your hands and for money. When we talk about work, it is the kind of work that God has appointed us to do. It is the kind of harvest work that's not just about getting your paycheck, but it's about getting people. It's a work of ministry. It's a work of caring for people. Jesus says when he sends out the 72, he says, all right, you're going to go out. You're going to be like sheep among wolves. Go on out because the fields are white unto harvest. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. And then he says to them, now go, which I think is awesome. I think it's just what a great commission from Jesus. Here's what he just said. The harvest is ready. It's plentiful. But there's just not many workers. There's not many workers who are doing the harvest. Right? The people are working, but when it's harvest time, people aren't going and getting the harvest. The harvest is ready, but the laborers are few. Okay, 72, we're talking to you now. Okay? Here's what you need to do. You need to pray for laborers. Pray to the Lord for more laborers to go into the harvest. And then he says to them, now you go. You see, you're not only going to pray for those who are going to go out, you're going to go out and you're going to do it yourself. And you are praying for people to do that, not because you don't want to, but because you need and we need help in this work. Amen? Am I making sense with all this? Did the food make you tired? No, I know it didn't. Proverbs 14:23 says, in all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty. Here's the thing, friends, all kinds of work, here it is. It's toil. It's work. This does not mean that work is easy. Work is not easy. Work is hard. That is a result of sin. Ministering to people is not easy. It is hard. It takes time, it takes sacrifice, and it takes just giving and doing things that sometimes it's just not that simple. We are far more prone to be a people who want to be ministered to rather than being people who minister to others. We want people to work for us, we just don't want to do the work when it comes to ministry. That's sometimes how it operates. But here's the reality, work is hard. There is toil in it. But mere talk tends only to poverty. So if we only talk about ministry, if we only talk about evangelism, if we only talk about community, if we only talk about getting together, if we only talk about good things that we're supposed to be doing, but we actually never do it, it actually leads to a church or to churches or to kingdom work that is impoverished, not succeeding. If all we do is talk about good things that we should be doing, but we're not actually doing it, then the result is poverty, not riches. And work is toil. It's hard. It's not easy. But that's what Jesus calls us into, isn't it? He looks at us and says, the harvest is plentiful. People are out there. Look into the field where you're at, where you're working. Look across the scope where your eyes see. Where do you see people? The harvest is plentiful. What are we going to do? How are we going to respond? It's hard work. So let me tell you, this is why this month we are spending the entire month talking about how do we tell our story? How do we share our story with people in a way that encourages them to come toward Jesus? How do we share our faith with people in a way that is effective in this community? And sitting around tables is a big part of that. Now, next Saturday, this coming Saturday, we are doing an evangelism training. Last week I told you we had 2 people signed up. I said, can we double it this week? Guess what we did? We doubled. We now have 4. We have 4 signed up. I'm asking, can we double that again? Church, we're meeting from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. 6 hours this coming Saturday, and lunch is included. What we're going to be talking about is how do we reach people for Christ in an area where people don't want Christ. People do not want Jesus. People do not look kindly on the church. They do not look kindly on Christians. This is a chance for us to come together and to work together to gain a better understanding on how do we reach people in the harvest. How do we do this? And so you can go to our website. It's right on our homepage, arlingtoncommunity.church. You'll see that poster up on the homepage. Click it, and sign up. We really, really want to try to have as many of us there as we can, so we can learn together, we can study together, and we can start working together in order to see people coming to Jesus. This is our mandate. This is our work. It is the work of wisdom in all the things that we do, yes, and how we conduct ourselves in our jobs, but also in the way that we interact with people, because the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Church, ACC, can we change this? Can we change it so that the laborers are not few? And that we can truly engage into our community to reach those who are going to hell without Christ. And the only option to salvation is what we have. There's no other option. There's no plan B. We can't tell people, just be good. It can't. We have to introduce them to the Lord of life, to the one who redeems and saves. Without that, there is no salvation. And this is the work of wisdom that we have to be engaging in. But there is a good way to do that in our culture. And that's what we want to talk about over this month. How do we do this?